The church had never been so full. Every pew was occupied. Every eye was on her. Eleanor stood at the altar in her mother's wedding dress, her hands clasped around a bouquet of white roses. She was 22, and she was about to marry the man she loved. Or so she thought. The clock struck 11, then 11:30, then noon. The preacher shifted his weight. The guests began to whisper. Her mother's face went pale. Her father's jaw tightened. The groom, William, had not arrived. He was not coming. A boy ran up the aisle, out of breath, holding a note. He handed it to the preacher, who read it and went gray. He handed it to Eleanor. She read the words, and the world stopped. William had run away with another woman. He was sorry. He was not coming back. She stood frozen, the note crumpled in her hand. The whispers grew louder. Someone laughed. Someone else shushed them. Her mother began to cry. Her father started toward the door, ready to hunt William down. Eleanor wanted to die. She wanted the floor to swallow her. Then a man stood up from the back pew. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face and kind eyes. It was Thomas, William's older brother, the rancher who had never come to town, who had always kept to himself. He walked down the aisle, his boots echoing. He stopped before her, and the church went silent. He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Then he took her hand, the one still holding the crumpled note, and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the room. "I'll marry you instead." She stared at him, unable to speak. The preacher looked at her father, who looked at Thomas, who looked only at Eleanor. "I have loved you for 3 years," Thomas said, quietly now for her ears alone. "I never said anything because William asked first, but he is gone. And I am here," her mother gasped. Her father stepped forward, ready to object. But Eleanor looked at Thomas, at the man who had been in the background of every family gathering, who had always been kind, who had never once looked at her with pity. "Yes," she said. "I will marry you." The preacher blinked. "Are you sure?" he asked. Eleanor nodded, her eyes never leaving Thomas's face. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." Her father opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no argument. Thomas was a good man. He always had been. They were married in the same church, in the same hour, with the same guests. The flowers were the same. The dress was the same, but the groom was different. Thomas stood beside her, his hand steady on hers, and when the preacher asked if he would take her to be his wife, his voice was firm. "I will." They rode to his ranch that night, a wagon instead of a carriage, a cabin instead of a city house. She sat beside him, her dress bunched on the wooden seat, her bouquet forgotten. "You really loved me for 3 years?" she asked. He nodded, his eyes on the road. "Why did you never say anything?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because William was my brother. Because I thought he would be good to you. Because I did not think I deserved you." She looked at him, at the man who had saved her from humiliation, and felt something new. The first weeks were strange. They were strangers, bound by a wedding that had not been planned. But Thomas was patient, kind, and never pushed. He showed her the ranch, taught her to ride, and waited for her to come to him. Slowly, she began to fall in love. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, she found him at the fence, watching the cattle. She stood beside him, close enough to feel the warmth of his arm. "I thought I loved William," she said, "but I did not know what love was. I know now." He turned to look at her, his eyes searching hers. "And what is love?" She took his hand, pressed it to her heart. "It is this. It is being seen. It is being chosen when you have nothing left. It is you." He pulled her into his arms, and she went willingly. The years that followed were the happiest of her life. The ranch flourished, the children came, and the cabin became a home. William sent a letter once, asking for forgiveness, but she burned it. She had nothing to forgive. He had given her the greatest gift. He had left. On the night of their 10th anniversary, Thomas took her to the church where they had been married. It was empty, quiet, the pews dusted with moonlight. "Do you remember standing here, waiting for someone who never came?" he asked. She nodded, leaning against him. "I remember thinking my life was over," she said. "And then you stood up from the back pew, and you walked down the aisle, and you saved me." He kissed her forehead, her cheek, her lips. "You saved me too," he said. "I was a lonely man. You gave me purpose." They stood together at the altar, where she had been abandoned and then chosen. The moonlight streamed through the stained glass, painting the floor in colors. She looked up at Thomas, at the man who had waited 3 years to speak, who had married her in the place of his brother, who had loved her every day since. "I would wait for you again," he said. "I would wait a lifetime," she smiled. And in the quiet of the church, a woman who had been left at the altar and a man who had loved her from the shadows knew that the wedding that had begun as a scandal had become the truest thing either of them had ever known.